Did you know history is full of secrets and surprises? We often think of history as a series of well-documented major events. Wars, revolutions, the rise and fall of empires. But tucked away in the footnotes and forgotten archives are stories so strange, so unexpected, they sound like they've been made up today. We're going to pull back the curtain on 10 of these astonishing historical facts. From wars that ended before lunch to ancient hygiene habits that will make you rethink your laundry routine. We're diving deep into the bizarre side of the past. As we go through them, I invite you to keep a running tally and guess which fact will shock you the most. You might think you have a good grasp on the timeline of human civilization, but I guarantee at least one of these facts will completely reframe how you see it. When you think of a war, you probably picture long, drawn-out campaigns, lasting months, if not years. The 100 Years' War. The 30 Years' War. But what if I told you there was a war that was over in less time than it takes to watch an episode of a TV show? I'm standing, metaphorically, on the coast of Zanzibar on the 27th of August, 1896. The shortest war in recorded history, the Anglo-Zanzibar War. A conflict that lasted a grand total of 38 minutes. It sounds almost comical, but it was very real and deadly. It began with a succession crisis. The pro-British Sultan died. His cousin, Khalid bin Bargash, seized power without British approval. This violated a treaty with the British Empire. Britain was at the zenith of its colonial power. The British issued an ultimatum. Stand down and leave the palace by 9 a.m. or face the consequences. Khalid, surrounded by about 2,800 soldiers and his armed yacht, the HHS Glasgow, decided to call their bluff. It was a serious miscalculation. At 9:02 a.m., the Royal Navy opened fire. 5 warships in the harbor unleashed a devastating bombardment on the Sultan's palace. Within minutes, the wooden palace was in flames. The Sultan's artillery was silenced. His yacht was sunk. By 9:40 a.m., the palace flag was pulled down. The surrender was official. The war was over. A swift, brutal demonstration of imperial power. A historical footnote showing the immense technological and military gap of the late 19th century. A war that lasted just 38 minutes. Here's a statement that might break your brain's internal timeline. Cleopatra, the last active ruler of the Ptolemaic Kingdom of Egypt, lived closer in time to the first moon landing than she did to the construction of the Great Pyramid of Giza. Take a moment to let that sink in. We tend to lump all of ancient Egypt together into one monolithic block of history, a world of pharaohs, pyramids, hieroglyphs. But the span of that civilization was immense, so vast that its own ancient history was ancient to the people living at its end. Let's look at the numbers. The Great Pyramid of Giza, completed around 2560 BC. It was built during the Old Kingdom, a period of incredible architectural achievement. Cleopatra, on the other hand, lived from 69 BC to 30 BC. She was a contemporary of Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, part of a world that was becoming increasingly dominated by Rome. The time between the completion of the Great Pyramid and Cleopatra's birth is roughly 2,500 years. Now, consider the other side of the equation. The Apollo 11 moon landing happened in 1969 AD. The time between Cleopatra's death in 30 BC and that one small step for man is about 2,000 years. So, by a margin of about 5 centuries, the world of smartphone space travel and the internet is chronologically closer to Cleopatra's world than her world was to the age of the Great Pyramid builders. Let's play a little game of what came first. If I were to ask you which is older, the esteemed traditional and very British Oxford University, or the mighty, sprawling, and complex Aztec Empire, what would you say? Most people would instinctively place the Aztecs deep in the annals of ancient history, long before the establishment of modern European institutions. But in this case, intuition would be wrong. Oxford University is in fact significantly older than the Aztec Empire. Evidence of teaching at Oxford dates back to as early as 1096. It wasn't a fully fledged university in the modern sense just yet, but the seeds were there, and it grew rapidly from 1167 onwards. It stands as one of the oldest continuously operating universities in the world, a bastion of knowledge that has been around for the better part of a millennium. Generations of scholars have walked its halls, debating philosophy and science while the world outside changed dramatically. Meanwhile, the founding of the Aztec capital, Tenochtitlan, the event that marks the beginning of their empire, is traditionally dated to 1325. That's over 200 years after teaching had already begun at Oxford. By the time the Aztecs were building their incredible city on an island in Lake Texcoco, Oxford had already been a center of academic life for centuries. It's a fascinating juxtaposition. While one civilization was establishing its political dominance in Mesoamerica and military dominance, another, thousands of miles away, was formalizing a system of higher education that would shape the Western world for centuries to come. History's timelines are rarely as neat as we imagine. The Eiffel Tower. It is the symbol of Paris, an icon of France, and honestly, one of the most recognizable structures on the planet. It's really impossible to imagine the Parisian skyline without it. But what if I told you that its famous silhouette was never meant for the City of Light? The Eiffel Tower was actually originally designed, proposed, and offered to a completely different city, Barcelona, Spain. The plan was for it to be the centerpiece of the 1888 Barcelona Universal Exposition. Gustave Eiffel, a brilliant engineer known for his work with metallic structures, presented his design to the city officials in Barcelona. He envisioned a colossal iron lattice tower that would dwarf every other structure in the city and serve as a monumental entrance arch to the exposition. However, the Spanish committee took one look at the plans and said no, gracias. They thought the design was just too strange, too radical, and far too expensive. More importantly, they felt it really didn't fit with the city's aesthetic, so they rejected it outright. With his ambitious plans rebuffed, Eiffel turned his attention to the next major World's Fair, the 1889 Exposition Universelle in Paris, which was being held to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the French Revolution. He submitted the same design, and this time, the reception was different. The French committee, eager for a spectacular monument to mark the occasion, approved the project. And so, the tower that Barcelona deemed an eyesore was built in Paris, where, ironically, it was also initially decried by many artists and intellectuals as a monstrous metal asparagus. It just goes to show how sometimes one city's rejected oddity can become another's enduring symbol. Napoleon Bonaparte. The name conjures images of a military genius, a strategic mastermind who conquered much of Europe. He faced down the combined might of British, Austrian, Russian, but one of his most memorable and embarrassing defeats came not from soldiers, but from a fluffy, twitchy-nosed, aggressive opponent. A horde of bunnies. No, not a metaphor. A true, bizarre story from 1807. It happened after the treaties of Tilsit. To celebrate, his chief of staff, Alexandre Berthier, organized a grand rabbit hunt. Berthier wanted to impress the emperor. He reportedly procured hundreds, maybe even thousands. He had them caged along the edges of a large field. The plan was simple: open the cages and enjoy a day of sport. However, Berthier made a critical error. Instead of wild rabbits that would flee, he'd bought domesticated ones. These rabbits were used to being fed by humans. When the cages opened, they didn't see predators. They saw food bringers. Instead of scattering, the colony charged directly at Napoleon and his men. The bunny horde swarmed the most powerful man in Europe, climbing his legs. His men tried to beat them back with riding crops and whips, but the tide of fur was relentless. Napoleon panicked and fled to his carriage, rabbits still leaping as he was driven away. The Great Fire of London in 1666 is remembered as one of the city's greatest disasters. It raged for 4 days, destroying over 13,000 houses, 87 parish churches, St. Paul's Cathedral. It left the medieval city in ashes and rendered hundreds of thousands homeless. It was, without a doubt, an absolute catastrophe. But amid the devastation, the inferno had an unintended and profoundly positive side effect. It helped end the Great Plague. For 2 years prior, London had been in the grip of the bubonic plague. The 1665 outbreak was one of the last major epidemics in England, killing an estimated 100,000 people, nearly a quarter of London's population. The city was a place of death and fear. The plague was spread by fleas carried on black rats, which thrived in cramped, unsanitary medieval conditions. The narrow streets overflowing with waste and wooden, overcrowded houses were perfect breeding grounds for rats and disease. Then came the fire. Its immense heat and scale effectively sterilized the city's heart. In the world of technology, we use the term bug all the time to describe a glitch, an error, a flaw in a piece of software or hardware. We might say something like, "My app is buggy," or "They need to debug the code." The term is so common that we rarely stop to think about where it came from. You might assume it's just a metaphor, a clever piece of jargon. But actually, the origin of the term is literal. The very first documented computer bug was an actual physical insect. The story takes us back to the 9th of September, 1947. I'm at Harvard University, where a team of pioneers, including the remarkable computer scientist Grace Hopper, are working on the Harvard Mark II computer. This wasn't a sleek laptop. It was an electromechanical behemoth, a room-sized machine filled with relays, switches, vacuum tubes. On this particular day, the machine was malfunctioning. The team began the painstaking process of troubleshooting, checking circuits and connections to find the source of the problem. After a thorough search, they found it. Wedged between the points of one of the electromechanical relays was a moth. The insect had been attracted to the light and warmth of the machine, got stuck, and its body was preventing the relay from closing, thus disrupting the circuit and causing the error. The operators carefully removed the moth with tweezers and taped it into their logbook. Let's travel back to ancient Rome. This civilization was known for its incredible engineering, its aqueducts, its roads, its monumental architecture. But they also had unique solutions to everyday problems. For instance, how do you get your toga sparkling white? The answer, for the Romans, was urine. When you think of the Olympic Games, you probably think of athletic prowess, running, jumping, swimming, lifting. It's a celebration of the human body pushed to its limits. But for the first half of the 20th century, the Olympics also awarded medals for something else entirely: art. From 1912 to 1948, art competitions were an official part of the Olympic Games. Architecture, literature, music, painting, sculpture. This was actually part of the original vision for the modern Olympics, as laid out by their founder, Pierre de Coubertin. He was inspired by the ancient Greek Olympics, which he believed were a celebration of both mind and body. And there you have it, 10 facts that prove history is anything but a dry collection of dates and names. From a 38-minute war to urine-based laundry, the past is a place of incredible strangeness and surprising connections. Which of these facts surprised you the most? Was it the timeline of Cleopatra, or Napoleon's battle with the bunnies? I'd love to know. Please drop a comment below with your favorite fact from this list. Thank you for watching. History is full of surprises. See you in the next one.